All right, everybody. I'd like to welcome you back to Combat Learjet podcast. This is our fifth podcast, and we're excited. We have a super interesting guest today. We're on with Ryan Weaver, and I'm also here with Derek from Mo Guns, who's running it today. So we appreciate you guys joining in, and we're going to jump right into it. It's going to be a great night tonight talking about this.
Absolutely. And before we get into the nitty gritty, we want to thank our first sponsor, Strike Force Energy. They help keep this podcast afloat. They offer an amazing product that for only about $1 per serving, much cheaper than an energy drink, you get an awesome product that is healthier and a lot more transportable than a full-size Monster energy drink or anything like that. If you guys are interested in that, please be sure to use the code CombatLearjet at strikeforceenergy.com. It gets you 20% off, and it helps support this podcast.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks, Derek. Well, Ryan, I can't tell you how thankful I am that you agreed to come on today. I was really interested in hearing your story. Just such a unique background and story, and I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Man, I can't thank you guys enough for bringing me on. I became a fan of yours on Instagram, and then we ended up connecting there. And you know, the stuff that you're posting is great, and you have a huge following of huge, strong, loyal following, which is pretty awesome. And you know, I think that we're going to have a lot of interesting conversation today with everything that's going on.
Absolutely. Well, Ryan, I just want to give you an opportunity to, the way we kind of run it, we just talk, and, you know, towards the end, as we have people jump in and ask questions, we'll answer a few of those. But I just want to give you the opportunity to kind of share who you are, your story. Like I said early on, it's very interesting, your background and the two worlds that you're spanning, from aviation to the country music scene. So I'll let you take it away, and I may ask you a question in between here and there, but appreciate hearing all your background.
Well, I went into the Army straight out of high school and came from a small town. Now, let me get back to where I was living before I talk about the military. But I grew up in actually all over the state of Florida, small town Marianna, Florida, and North Florida. If anybody that's listening out there has heard of it, it's right north of Tallahassee. And I moved to the East Coast, Rockledge, Florida, in fourth grade, right by NASA out there. I got to sit on top of my roof and as a kid and watch the space shuttle go off. And then I moved to West Central Florida in Citrus County. My hometown is Inverness, Florida. I actually was in Floral City, Florida, where my house was, but I graduated from high school from Inverness, Florida, in West Central Florida. A lot of folks have never heard of Inverness, but they've heard of Ocala, and that's about 22 miles northeast of my hometown, Inverness. So I went in the Army. I followed in my brother's footsteps. My oldest brother, Steve, was a Ranger in the Ranger Regiment for the Army and the 2nd Bat. And then he got out, went to 2 years of school, then went back in to be a Kiowa pilot. He flew, he retired as a W-4, but I followed in his footsteps. And then my brother, Aaron, he was also in the Ranger Regiment. He was in 3rd of 75th. He was actually in Somalia. He was in the ambush in Mogadishu, the actual event. He was the only non-commissioned officer that wasn't shot in the whole thing and survived that, which was, and he was on the ground. If everybody out there listening remembers Jeff Struker talking about how Pia was dead, he was kind of one of the lead characters in the movie. He was my brother's best Ranger buddy in the best Ranger competition 2 years in a row. They got 4th, but Aaron was in the 2nd convoy to get the 2nd Black Hawk that got shot down. And he was in the middle of all of that. If anybody's watched the History Channel interviews, he's for the making of Black Hawk Down. He's also interviewed there. So all of that actually happened a couple years after I went in, but I followed in his footsteps as well. And then once he got out of the military after the Ranger Regiment, he was out for a couple years and going to school just the same. He kind of followed directly in Steve's footsteps and everything that he did. He went to 2 years of school, and by that time I was military intelligence, stationed at Fort Leavenworth in Kansas, and then went to Hawaii for 3 years and came back to Kansas again, was restationed at Fort Leavenworth again, and then got stuck on recruiting duty for the Army, which sucked. And but I was sitting at my recruiting station on a Sunday night, and I'd already worked 6 days that week. That was my 7th day. Was getting ready to put somebody in the Army the next day, and Aaron called me from Fort Rucker. He had gotten selected, obviously, and went back in for candidate school and flight school. And he called me and said they changed the vision standards for flight school because it used to be, as most aviators out there probably know about the Army aviation side of things, it used to be 2020. Now it's 2050, correctable to 2020, or it was at the time when I went to flight school. So I didn't think I had 2020 vision. I put my packet in as an E4 when I was in Hawaii, and I had some problems with my pupil dilation, and I could never get it figured out or whatever, get the flight physical done. So I resubmitted my packet, and I was selected first time, and was gone 3 months after I selected my or didn't put my packet in to Warrant Officer Candidate School down at Fort Rucker. So, and that was in '99, and I went through flight school, graduated top of my class. Aaron and I were at flight school together, graduated top of my class. So, because with his help, I can't say that I did it on my own, but the coolest thing about that was not the achievement, but at my flight school graduation, Steve and Aaron were both there. Steve was prepping to go to Kosovo, and Aaron came in he was restationed to 82nd as a Kiowa aviator. He followed in Steve's footsteps again on that. But they both came to my flight school graduation, and the distinguished undergraduate for flight school class and Army aviation gets to get their wings pinned on by themselves. So both my brothers were there to pin my wings on together. And that was, we actually made Army history when we did that. We were the first 3 brothers to fly as warrant officers at the same time together. And I was extremely proud of that accomplishment, in that I was, following in my brother's footsteps to graduate and finish. But the ability to have my wings pinned on was by both my brothers, who I respected deeply, and became a Blackhawk guy. I decided to go with Blackhawks, and the reason I went with Blackhawks, and I did a pros and cons list with Steve while he was there, because he was there. Actually, I think he was back for a second. He was back for a second deployment or something like that. I'm trying to figure out how it all went down. But anyway, he was there for flight instrument examiner's course. That's what it was, for the second time coming back. So he and I did a pros and cons of a list of which aircraft to fly. And initially I was looking at Chinooks. And then back when I went to fly or pick aircraft, the Chinooks were still held at the higher echelons, and the duty stationing was limited. And so that, and plus the multiple roles and the different things, everybody knows that the Chinook is the most maneuverable aircraft the Army has as far as helicopters are concerned. But the multiple roles, the different duty stations, Steve, my older brother, although he was a Kiowa guy, said he always wanted to be a Black Hawk aviator. And I respected his opinion and the quality of aircraft. And the only thing I would never fly was a Apache. Just because they look cool doesn't mean I think they're cool. But I do have some great friends that went to fly Apaches. I just wasn't an aircraft I was interested in. So I ended up doing getting Blackhawks and being restationed to Germany. And in 2003, I was deployed to Iraq, and my boots were in the sand. I believe it was April 1st in 2003, and was in Camp Udari down there. For all y'all folks who got to spend some time down in Kuwait before you went up to Iraq, if there are some folks out there that had done the deployment thing, we were in Camp Udari for a little bit, and then I flew across the border, and we were restationed or deployed into Baghdad International Airport, where we took 3rd Infantry Division's place. And I flew all the way up until January 8th of 2004, which I got done with a flight and went into the company CP, and they had on Fox News that a Black Hawk had been shot down just west of Baghdad, and with no information. And then a long story short of that, I mean, I could tell you guys all about the day and exactly how everything went down. And I mean, it seems like it was yesterday still. But I woke up that next morning with my company commander calling me into his tent to tell me that my brother Aaron, which let me take a step back. Aaron was actually deployed there a few months before. I think it was October of 2013. And I wasn't, or excuse me, 2003. And I wasn't, I wasn't aware that he was there until he surprised me after a flight. Well, I was carrying the assistant deputy chief of staff for the 1st Armored Division on a VIP support mission. And Aaron had been sitting in my company CP pretty much all day because he was a cancer survivor and was non-deployable and got a waiver to go to Iraq because his little brother was there and his other brothers were there and sisters, and didn't want to be left behind because he was a warrior. And so he was non-deployable and got that waiver. And he was actually part of the waiver was he had to get bi-monthly blood screenings done for his the cancer to make sure that it hadn't come back. And so when he surprised me, he was coming back from one of those bi-monthly blood screenings from Baghdad Hospital, and he'd stop over where we were at and then get a medevac helicopter ride out to Kadam, where he was just southwest of Fallujah. And anyway, so I found out that he was on the back of that aircraft that was shot down. It killed everybody on board. He was on his way in a medevac helicopter to get one of those bi-monthly blood screenings done. And he and I actually had chatted a few days before that, and he sent me a message that said he was accepted into the sessions program for the 160th. So he was about to be one of the Army's elite helicopter aviators, and I have absolutely no question or doubt that he would have been. And so when you guys see me sign "Be safe" on everything, those were the last 2 words that he typed to me in that Yahoo instant message when we were chatting back and forth. And he was actually supposed to fly in. He was supposed to fly in a couple days or the day after that or 2 days after that. And I had my schedule set up to where I was going to be off for him to fly in. So we talked about it on that Yahoo Instant Messenger. Couple of other things as far as that story is concerned. On January 2nd, the first female cavalry captain, company commander, was killed in action when her Kiowa was shot down in Kimberly Hampton. And she, her memorial service was on January 4th, and I flew one of her college roommates and several other officers out to attend the memorial service, and Aaron was there. And you know, I talk about this in the, you know, every time that I talk about it. He heard after TAPS was done and the memorial service was over, he came over, he had tears in his eyes. And if you want to talk about somebody that was he was hard as woodpecker lips, man. He was he was Iron Man, like he was a superhero. And that's something that, you know, he came over to me and said, "I hate that song. I've had too many friends buried to it." And you know, we got to hang out for a little bit that day, and he came over to my aircraft, and it was kind of cool because, you know, he had the glass cockpit and I had the old Alpha Charlie model, UH-60 Alpha Charlie model with nothing but, you know, normal instruments, basic stuff. And he got and sat in my seat, and he's like, "Man, you got so many effing buttons and switches in here." And I'm like, "Well, we don't use half of them," but he's used to seeing, you know, television screens and his aircraft that had an engine big enough to start our 2 engines, but about the same as the APU. But anyway, so he got out and he had my crew chief take a picture. He said, "Take a picture for posterity," and with his camera. And then he was a handshaker. So I went to shake his hand, and he gave me a big old hug. And becoming a father changed him. The last couple of times I got to hang out with him because he surprised me again around Thanksgiving over at Baghdad International. But yeah, I could tell he was a different person. He was much calmer and more at peace. Somalia made him hard, and it made him he had to deal with a lot of stuff with that, and then that hug, is one of the last enduring things that he ever did with me. And I remember we're getting ready to take off, and I remember him walking away and turning around and smiling as we were getting ready to lift off. And that was the last time I saw him. So I returned back from Iraq. The last day I flew was the day he died. And I returned back from Iraq. It took me 3 days to get home. I think Aaron was one of the first killed in action from Florida, one of the first few from the state of Florida. And then he was the first from our county, but there were news. I came back to news cameras, and I mean, it was crazy. And then redeployed as a redetachment commander after, it's hard to, sometimes the chronology of this gets a little, a little bit emotional when I talk about it, but our hometown shut down the main highway, and I walked behind this horse-drawn caisson for 2.5 miles down our main street into our high school football stadium. And we had his memorial service after a close friends memorial service in the funeral home. We had a public memorial service on our high school football field at the 50-yard line. The day sucked. It was the second worst day of my life, next to finding out when he died. And I was in a fog the whole time. Our family was destroyed. And anyway, so I redeployed to Germany and guys, or everybody that's listening, guys, gals, whoever's listening, this time makes it easier, but it doesn't take away what you're hearing in my voice. It doesn't make anything different. He's still gone, and he always will be. But anyway, so I redeployed to Germany as a redetachment XO executive officer, and then was restationed to Fort Rucker as a TAC officer, and and then became not a flight instructor. I became an instructor in the academic classroom for Warrant Officer Career College, and I finished out my career. Then I never flew again, actually, until just a few weeks ago, or about a month ago. I'll tell you guys about that. But so I started right after becoming a TAC officer, or leaving the TAC officer job. I did the Fort Rucker military auto competition, and I got second. I got runner up in that. And the guy that when he went on to do nationals, Fort Rucker had their 50th anniversary celebration, and Tracy Lawrence and Daryl Worley came, and I got to do an opening show on on another airfield. But I got to do one of the opening shows for the whole day, and I met up with the Army band guys, a bunch of non-commissioned officers, or a group of non-commissioned officers that were playing off post, extremely talented musicians, and they needed country added to their set list. So I started playing in all the bars and the local bars around Fort Rucker, Enterprise, Dothan, Alabama, all around there, around the Southeast. And then I made a goal for myself that every 6 months I would move to a bigger club and stay there. So we started moving to the medium-sized clubs and had to travel out a little bit further away. And then the guys started getting super busy with the Army band. We did a high school. I got to do a high school tour with them, their rock band, which was kind of cool. We went to 10 different high schools and came in as a Nashville recording artist with them, which was really cool. But then I moved to another band and worked with them for a little bit to move to the larger club scene. Started playing the big clubs like the Whiskey and Whiskey River. I think the Whiskey River was down in Pensacola, and the Whiskey was in Macon, Georgia, and they're gigantic clubs. And then playing down in Florida, Central Florida as well. And moved on from that group of folks onto several different musicians down in Central Florida. I kind of started hiring guys out of Central Florida to do that I became friends with to do shows with me, and started opening up for national acts, and got to open up for Blake Shelton and Craig Morgan and Montgomery Gentry, got to meet Troy before. I mean, Troy a while back, super kind guy. It was sad to see him go in that helicopter crash of all things. But yeah, and it was just a great, things just really started taking off, and I was traveling back and forth to Nashville every other weekend. And then when I got out of the military in 2012, retired with almost 21 years, and yes, if you guys check out the timeline from that, I made a conscious decision on my own because it was the best way that I felt would be my contribution to the Army aviation community. I didn't feel that because it took me 2 years to look at a Black Hawk, that my mind was in the right place to be in a cockpit with another aviator or people in the back of my aircraft. They deserve to be flying with somebody who was in the right state of mind. And I made the decision to execute my sole survivor status for no longer being deployed as an aviator. But I did put all of my heart and soul into training future warrant officers to take my brother's place. And, I don't regret it one bit. There are other guys that could have handled it probably a lot more, or a lot differently than I did. But for me, I think that the impact that I'm going to be able to make as a combat veteran and Gold Star family member, I felt that the best way that I could contribute was to let people know about things that they didn't ever have experiences with, which would be the military, since there are so few of us in the United States as far as the population is concerned. And my goal was always to get to sold out stadiums, singing my songs. So I retired and moved up to Nashville, and it took me a little bit of time to get on my feet up here. Was working at the Wild Horse Saloon that everybody's probably heard about in Nashville as a bar back and a personal trainer, and going to school full time at Embry-Riddle, and finished my bachelor's degree using a post 9/11 Montgomery GI Bill, and met my wife and started being able to get back into the music scene. And in 2014, I met David Corlew, who's Charlie Daniels' manager, in an event that I did with them, and he invited me to sing on the Ryman Auditorium stage to open up as one of the opening acts for Charlie in 2014. Then in 2015, we did the Volunteer Jam. I played between Ted Nugent and Michael W. Smith at Bridgestone Arena.
Wow.
And then on September 11th of 2015, I got to perform on the Grand Ole Opry to a sold out crowd with Charlie Daniels introducing his second ever Grand Ole Opry segment, which was a huge honor. And every single one of these stages I got to get on, I got to tell the story about my brother. But I need to back up, because I want to say in 2014, I got to get on these stages and talk about my brothers, because on December 17th in 2013, my brother-in-law, Randy Billings, was piloting a Black Hawk in Afghanistan, and he was doing a reconnaissance of a radar tower or a cell tower or something to that effect. I don't know the particulars because I believe it was a classified flight, but they said that's what was going on. That was unclassified. And the Taliban had set up a ground or an IED, and it exploded underneath the aircraft and blew the tail boom off the aircraft. And they rolled down the mountain several hundred feet, and there was one survivor that was actually in the back of the aircraft, one of the passengers. He survived it, and it killed everybody else on board. So our family became a two-time Gold Star family in 2013. So on the Ryman Auditorium stage and on Bridgestone Arena, where there was a sold-out crowd, and on the Grand Ole Opry stage, there was a sold-out crowd. And then again at the Bridgestone Arena for Volunteer Jam, I was able to tell people about my story and about my brothers and their sacrifices. And my career started really taking a huge jump after those performances. We ended up doing Burn, the music video that a lot of folks have seen parts of out there, if not the full thing. We did a music video with 2 survivors from Benghazi, Chris Peranto and John Tigan, very good friends of mine. We got that video done, and Paramount gave us authorization to use some of the movie trailer clips in there. I got an all law enforcement, first responder, military family cast as extras, along with John and Chris, Tig and Tonto, as everybody knows them. And once that happened, I played a show out in Colorado and opened up for Doc and Warrant and Great White. And yeah, country music opened up for those guys. I fit right in. If you guys haven't listened to Burn, you'll probably see that I could fit in with the best of any 80s rock band that's out there. But we did a show, and Sean Gleason, the CEO of PBR, was in the front row when I played for 200 people, just all the bike riders that just came back from a veterans ride. And there were probably 15,000 people by the end of the evening, but I played to 200 people like I was playing to a sold-out arena, like I did every show. I got to tell Aaron's story and Randy's story. Brought Oz from 13 Hours up on stage with me. And Sean Gleason came up to me after the show and handed me his card and said he was interested in getting me involved in some of the stuff that PBR was doing. And I had no idea who he was. I was grateful. I've always wanted to get involved with the PBR, shook his hand, talked to him for a little bit, talked to everybody else that was around, went up, sold some merchandise. He was there to, he checked out my merchandise and whatnot. And I went back to my bus and looked at his card and saw it was the CEO of PBR. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
The head cheese of one of the biggest sports organizations in the international sports organizations, but one of the biggest growing sports organizations in the United States right now. And so I went out and talked to him, apologized. I didn't give him more time. And he said, no, Ryan, you treat every single person like they're the most important person in front of you. And that's what we want involved in the PBR. And, you know, it's, I tell my guys before every show, we do a prayer, and I say, they make this your last show. I mean, we're going to put it out all on stage, because if there's anybody that knows that you can have plans for the future and it can all be taken away from you in a split second, I'm that guy. And that's how I've lived my life and lived as a country music artist, and never passed up an opportunity to be able to share their stories. And now we're about to be on a world stage with the PBR World Finals. And with all the stuff that's happening around the nation right now, I got a feeling that I might be on the national stage a little bit sooner than that, because the World Finals are in November. And as the patriotic voice of the PBR, they're bringing me in to talk about their We Stand United pledge, where all the PBR or professional bull riders have signed a pledge to stand during a national anthem, every national anthem, regardless of what country they're in. And these are bull riders from multiple nations around the world that are competing in the PBR. So that's pretty much, you know, up to this point. That's the long and short of things. I could have probably made that a little bit shorter, but hopefully, you know, that'll give everybody an insight as to who I am and what I'm doing, and, you know, why my posts are what they are, and that kind of stuff. So,
Well, Ryan, that's fantastic. You know, as I'm just listening to that, I know I speak for everybody listening and everybody that's going to listen to this, how much we appreciate the sacrifices that your family has made for this country. I can't even begin to imagine going through some of that stuff. And I think what you're doing is fantastic. I think that the voice that you talk about is awesome. And you know, when I first ran into you, it was immediately evident to me that you're doing a fantastic job getting that out there and sharing those stories. And I know both your brothers will be proud of what you're doing. And
thanks.
I appreciate you coming on and talking about that. And I know that's hard. And I'm obviously, you made a point in there about you didn't fly again. And I just want to reinforce that. I'm with you on that, brother. I don't think anybody looks at that like, oh, you didn't fly. That's a fantastic decision you made. And I just wanted to encourage you in that as I listen to that story.
Well, I appreciate that. And I can share the story about flying again. I actually got to get in I think it's a R-44 You know, one of those little mosquito helicopters that you always see out at the out at the beach.
Yeah, yeah.
I got to get in one of those with a guy who was he was actually an Apache guy, and then a Kiowa guy, and then but he now owns his own helicopter company down in Texas. JC is his name, JC Anderson. If any of you guys know who he is, but incredible. He's an instructor pilot in like 6 different aircraft, and are qualified in 6 different aircraft, and instructor pilot in every one of them. And one of the most humble and kind individuals that I've run into in a while. And it's crazy to think that he went through flight school, was done with flight school, and out of the Army after I had already left. Or excuse me, I wasn't an instructor or anything. I would have never seen him going through flight school or anything like that. Even in my time around there, it was kind of interesting. But he got, he got me in the aircraft and said, I actually, the first time I got up in an aircraft was at a Halo for Freedom Warrior Foundation event. If anybody has ever heard of them, check them out. A great nonprofit organization that supports camaraderie and the healing process of wounded veterans. And I've kind of attended these events as a veteran and a supporter, a national voice for the organization. But I had not flown until just earlier this year. I had not even gotten in a helicopter. I mean, my wife got in a helicopter in Vegas last year, and I freaked out. Yeah, that was tough, man.
Yeah.
My family doesn't have a great history in helicopters. My brother Steve still flies. He works with a civilian company down in St. Augustine, and he still flies and deploys with that civilian company. Scares me shitless every time it happens, or every time he goes. But I gotta trust that the best is gonna happen, and he's one of the best aviators I've ever.
Oh, might have lost him there for a moment.
Are we here?
Yeah, we lost you for just a second there.
Yeah, I have no idea my connection was lost, but then it came back. Sorry about that. But anyway, so my brother deploys. I don't know what the last thing was that year, but my brother deploys. He still flies. But anyway, I got in, and I was just gonna we did some helicopter hog hunting down in Texas, and pissed a lot of left-leaning folks off because they don't understand the hog problem down in Florida, or excuse me, down in Texas. They don't understand how out of control that is. But it was also therapeutic for veterans to get up there and be able to shoot something.
Yep.
And to be able to help out local farmers and do it in such a manner that, was exciting. Did some rappelling and those kind of things. They did all that. But I got in the back of a helicopter while a friend of mine, Gary Marriage, and he actually did a whole lot of supporting the veterans. He was one of the major contributors to the burn music video, but and videoed it the whole time, was on live Facebook. But anyway, that was the first time I got up in a helicopter, and it didn't feel bad. It was a little bit emotional to start, but other than that, it was a great experience to get back up. And then we went to Colorado. John Tigan has an annual hog roast out at his house, and I was the entertainment for it this year. And we went out to a veteran's home. They did a skydive out there, and then the helicopter, JC took me. I asked him if I could fly back with him, and he said sure. And then on the way back, he's like, "Hey man, you want to fly?" And I'm like, "I don't know, brother. I don't know if this is something I want to do." And then man, that helicopter just flies itself. It's got its vertical fin is just like, you don't have to have your feet on the pedals. I mean, it's almost like flying a remote control inside the remote control.
Wow.
But
wow.
It's really a great helicopter to fly. If anybody hasn't flown one, I'm sure if they got in it, they would really enjoy it. But he gave me the controls, man, and it was just like I had not stepped out of an aircraft to fly for 14 years,
Wow. That's awesome.
or 10 years, excuse me. Yeah, no, 13 years. But anyway, so that was an amazing experience. And then a couple weekends ago, we had another event out in Wyoming with the Halo for Freedom Wyoming chapter. And they did several skydive jumps with on the veterans out there, but they were doing helicopter target shooting. They had planes for them to be able to jump out of there. But and then when he flew back to the airport, asked me if I want to fly again, but this time we were flying, looking for wires and flying low enough, and I landed it. And I mean, did the whole. That was just the first time was just an altitude and heading thing, but this time we did a traffic pattern. Just did what you do normally do to fly. Like everybody wouldn't think it's that big of a deal, but to be able to, and I had passengers in the back too, but to fly it, and do the things that I used to do, it was just a really therapeutic experience. And to be able to get to do that again. And had it not been for another veteran reaching out and saying, man, let's just do this together. I don't think that I don't know if I would have ever gotten back in an aircraft to do it. So it was an amazing thing, man. But the cool thing is I get to be in a position that I'm in right now to do the same thing for other people, but now at a much larger scale. So anyway, I'll stop talking and let you guys ask.
No, it's great, brother, and we appreciate that. I think if you're willing to stay with us one more segment, we'll wrap up this first segment. We'll take a few minute break.
Yeah.
And then we'll come back, and then on the next segment, maybe we'll talk about I'm interested in any cool flying stories you maybe have for that. And then I'm also curious on, what's next for you as you begin to, continue to grow on this national stage. So, and then lastly, maybe we'll talk about some of the current political events going on in our country. If you wouldn't mind coming back and talking about that.
Yeah, we'll get our Patriot on.
That sounds great, man. Awesome. So appreciate those listening. We'll go ahead and wrap up this session. We'll take a few minutes break, and if you'll stay with us, Ryan, we'll be back here in just a couple minutes.
Sounds great.
All right, buddy. Okay, we are back for our next episode with Ryan Weaver and Derek from Mo Guns. I just wanted, wanted to say thank you again, Ryan, for coming on and sharing your story. It's fantastic. The last episode was awesome.
I
And
appreciate it, man. Thank you guys for having me again.
yeah, it's fantastic. And I have to tell you, as I sit here, I'm just in awe of your story and your family, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate the sacrifices. So
Thanks, man. I really appreciate you saying that.
So we talked about last time, your story. We wanted to, Derek, did you want to jump in with?
Oh, yeah. Before we jump into our second segment and talk a little bit more about your story and the insanity that is the current political climate, I would like to give a shout out to our first sponsor, Strikeforce Energy. It is created by a Navy SEAL, is veteran owned and operated. If you need energy on the go to strikeforceenergy.com. Tiny 10 pouches, only 99 cents a piece. You can pour it in water, coffee, other energy drinks if you're crazy. If you do, be sure to use code COMBAT Learjet, one word. It'll get you 20% off your order, and it'll help support this podcast.
Awesome. Thank you, Derek. So, yeah, Ryan, I just enjoyed hearing the story. I like to open this up. I don't know if you have any unique, obviously, if you're in Iraq in 2003, you probably saw some crazy stuff there. I don't know if you had any stories that you wanted to share kind of from your flying days and that.
Man, I mean, I'll tell you, I was the flight ops guy going into Iraq. I was the junior W-2, CW-2. So I was the junior aviator going into Iraq, and I did most of the flight scheduling. So I ended up getting on most of the flights because you don't give the good flights to yourself.
Yep. That's a good scheduler there.
Yep. Well, if you want to make a lot of enemies real quick, you do. But but I took a lot of the logistics runs down to Doha, because those were just a way for me to be able to get one flight in that would probably be as long as 3 flights of interesting flights anyway in the city. But we had several missions that were sketchy, but I can tell you the first time that I almost killed myself over there flying, which was I did which everybody's like, yeah, tell me about how you almost killed yourself. Here we go. Now we're talking aviation.
Yeah, we all have those stories.
Yep. So. But I learned to sling load in Hanau, Germany on wet grass in a closed traffic pattern with a fuel blivet. So if anybody out there is a helicopter aviator, if you know how easy that was to learn, easy of a situation it was to learn in, didn't have to worry about anything getting in my way, didn't have to worry about dust, didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. Fuel blivets, roll, you name it. It was probably the easiest circumstance, which it should be because it's a learning circumstance, to get qualified on sling loads with. And then the next sling load I did was in Iraq and in Baghdad, downtown Baghdad, the Ministry of Defense building. It's a 6-story building downtown, and Saddam had put anti-aircraft guns up on the roof with ammunition, and they had the the air conditioning units and all that kind of stuff up top. So the next sling load that I got to do was off of a 6-story building, an anti-aircraft gun office, and also we did 2 runs with a cargo net and an anti-aircraft gun off the top of a 6-story building. After learning how to do it with a fuel blivet, probably 3 months prior or 6 months prior to that, when I first got qualified in it. But anyway, I was white knuckling it the whole time. The cargo net was pretty easy, but the sling load for the anti-aircraft gun, we went into the boneyard. If anybody got to spend any time at Baghdad International around there, but just northwest well, I mean, the runway was facing northwest, but just off the end of the runway on the north side, on the north side of the runway, we was called a boneyard, and it's really they were dropping hulks off there, and essentially the trucks that were towing the hulks and all those different things had beaten the sand down to talcum powder. I mean, it was just super fine sand. So we were coming in with the cargo net bag or cargo net thing, and we could drop it. We were starting to brown out. But after we had already gone through there, 2 other aircraft went through there, dropping the additional ammunition off, pretty much dusted out the whole LZ. And we didn't want to screw up another clevis. So we were going to have to go in and get both the clevises after we, got everything down. But anyway, we were going in with the anti-aircraft gun, and we started browning out. It had to have been 150 feet AGL. And I'm a young aviator still, right? I mean, this was one of my very first flights actually in Iraq. I'm with a senior instructor pilot for our battalion. So I got, a really experienced aviator. His name's John Crowley. I'll tell you a little bit about one of the last pictures I had with hair, if you guys remind me. But so we're bringing this anti-aircraft gun in, and our crew chief is calling, the distance to ground for the bottom of the gun, and we hit dirty air, lost effective. We lost lift, dropped in, and we missed poking the top of that anti-aircraft gun through the bottom of the aircraft by probably a foot.
Wow.
Ooh. So the crew chief is yelling, pull up, and because the bottom dropped out. And I did the dumb thing that a junior aviator would do. I yanked up on the collective, and of course, master warning light goes off. Master caution light, goes off. I've forgotten more than I even knew in aviation. So I apologize, guys, if I sound like I'm ignorant. It's been a long time. Sure. No, and I haven't been studying this stuff all day, every day at all. But anyway, so, all the bells and whistles start going off. We get into rotor droop, and the aircraft is very close to hitting the ground. And, the guy that I was flying with was super calm, didn't say anything, reset the master caution, dropped the collective, and lean the cyclic forward so we could get into clean air. And I watched the pitot tubes almost drag the ground as we hit ETL and pulled it out of there. But I would have dumped us over and probably killed us. No telling, because you never know what's going to happen when that rotor system starts flying everywhere. That was probably my crappiest moment in flying that I could say that happened over there. And quite honestly, there were other things that happened, but my stories, my combat stories, or my time in combat in a general support aviation unit, I don't have I don't have a whole bunch of, awesome stories like my brother in supporting combat missions, direct support and combat missions, and those kind of things. I'm never going to claim for a second that I'm some superhero aviator, or that, I'm some bad Muldoon. I was honored to get to go over there and fly with some of the best aviators that the Army had to offer. I was honored to be over there with my brother. And, my takeaway from it was being able to forever call myself a Black Hawk aviator, or former Black Hawk aviator, and to retire out as a warrant officer as a W-3 and collect a retirement paycheck for the rest of my life. So, and to be able to come back alive.
Absolutely. Wow.
And for me, that, despite a few of the other circumstances that happened and me almost killing myself on that flight, I was able to come back alive. And I think that, I'm never going to not be proud of my service. And, my short combat stint in comparison to some of my brothers and sisters in arms that have done multiple tours to both Iraq and Afghanistan and God knows where else around the world to protect our freedoms. But if I can be the voice for them at the national level for the rest of my life, I'm going to be doing that.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I know exactly. I mean, I'm in the same boat as you. I flew Learjets around over there. My whole name, Combat Learjet, is kind of it's a joke, I mean, it's a Learjet. We don't really do
Right.
anything combat, but
I don't find it as a joke. But
yeah, I feel you though, man. That's exactly what my feelings are on that, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the stories, and I think anybody that does this thing of aviation long enough is going to have a story where they've almost killed themselves, and
right.
I definitely have a couple of those in my life. And as you get by them, you look back and go, wow, I'm grateful I survived that. And, for me, if it wasn't for the grace of God, I would have been medal a couple times. So that's awesome, man. I appreciate your story on that. And you kind of lead right into what we talked about before is this, I'm proud of the service you did for the country. I'm proud. Once you've done it, you've been in the military, you've served. If you've been an aviator in the military, then you're in even a different group, and just what that means to you. Obviously, with your history and your brothers, what all that means to you. And I just wanted to touch on if you wanted to address it, and I'll be happy to talk on it too. Just what's going on in our country right now, the things that we're seeing yesterday with the NFL, the the kneeling during the national anthem. And I just wanted another veteran's take on what your feelings are, what your thoughts, and then I'll be happy to follow you up on that.
Well, one of the things that the PBR started an initiative is actually one of the bullfighters, Shorty Gorman, who's probably the most famous bullfighter that they've got, or he is the most famous bullfighter that they've got, one of the most famous bullfighters of all time. And he's they used to call them rodeo clowns, but they're not anymore. They're actually considered bullfighters. But they he started an initiative called the We Stand United Pledge, and this is one of the reasons why, of the many reasons why, I'm extremely excited about being the patriotic voice of the PBR and getting to. I don't have to change who I am. I haven't had to change anything. My cowboy hat had to change a little bit because I used to have a rocking cowboy, like a rocker cowboy hat, and we went to something a little bit more PBR friendly, let's just say. But I can't complain about it because I'm on with Larry Mahan, who is a 6-time world champion cowboy in bull riding and bronco riding, and we're working an endorsement deal with him, and his hats are just amazing. So I'm good with that. But they started this initiative, the We Stand United Pledge, and every single bull rider voluntarily made the pledge to stand during every national anthem, regardless of what country they're in. And this is the first large sports organization to sign a pledge to do that. And this came from the bottom up, not the top down. So this wasn't something that was that these bull riders were pressured into doing. It's something that they voluntarily did because they understand the opportunities that we have here in the United States. They understand the sacrifices that have been made by people like my brothers, but also every single veteran that has fought for this country and signed on the dotted line to be willing to give their life for this country. And all of our, the folks came before us that made us a free nation. They understand that. They come from traditional cowboy roots where they believe in integrity and grit and hard work and all these character traits that if you shook somebody's hand on the street that you would want to have in the person's hand that you're shaking. And something that we try and emulate in the military on a day-to-day basis, all those different things that we talk about that matter to our military service members matters to the PBR. And I think it's an amazing thing to be part of that. Yesterday, I was at the Tennessee Titans football game because the Tennessee Titans were one of the few NFL teams that had not gotten into this taking a knee during the national anthem thing that's going on. And it's just amazing to me. It's absolutely amazing to me. Because I can ask anyone, there's not a single person that can say, tell me the last time someone stood up, put their hand on their heart, and sang the national anthem next to you or on any professional athletic field where it caused such a negative backlash uproar as these people or as these players taking a knee during the national anthem. Not one single person could ever say that. Nobody. So if it's a message of unity, if it's something that is supposed to create positive change in our country, then why is it creating so much more division? It's not something that most Americans see as a good thing. And then yesterday at the game, for the first time ever, and I could not believe my eyes, a country music artist, got the spotlight to sing the national anthem. I don't know if they get paid or not by the Tennessee Titans to sing the anthem or not. The spotlight to sing the national anthem. And then she and her guitar player took a knee right after she got done singing. So you're going to sing the national anthem and then protest the very song you just sang.
That doesn't make a lot of sense.
It makes no sense whatsoever. And everybody said, oh, well, she's just standing, she's standing or she's kneeling in support of the downtrodden and the oppressed and blah, 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 blah. Man, let me tell you something. Look at the percentages of the ethnic minorities that are in the NFL and tell me that is the picture of oppression. Look at our military and tell me that we didn't all have an equal opportunity to succeed based off of merit. I come from a world like that. You come from a world like that. Most everybody that's listening comes from a world like that. The oppression that is happening around the United States is not something that the national anthem has anything to do with, or our flag has anything to do with. They don't represent that. Yep. As a matter of fact, the crazy thing about it is this. The national anthem was being sung as the battle cry for the North, who was trying to fight against the South, as they said once the battle, once Abraham Lincoln needed a new reason for the war to continue. Initially, that wasn't even what it was about. It was about secession from the United States or from the Union. And then it turned into a slavery thing. Well, the national anthem was being sung by the North when they're the ones that were the proponents for freeing the slaves, and that was their go-to reason. So where do you see, for any logical explanation, where do you see that the national anthem has anything to do with oppression today? Nothing. If you want to take a knee some other time. Yeah. If you and they, they're saying this week that they're doing it because of what President Trump said. He had a conversation, and quite frankly, he had a conversation that most people are probably having that they're afraid to have out in public without being called a racist, sexist, misogynist, whatever it is that any Trump supporter was called during the election. But if you're mad at the president, he's got his own song. We all heard it before. We'll recognize it. He has his own song.
That's a great point.
So protest when his song is playing. You, me, every American, and every patriot out there, every military service member that has served and sacrificed, every patriot that fought to make this country free, that's the national anthem song. Amen. So if you want to protest something, if you don't like somebody, if you don't like what's happening in this country, get in your communities and start making change there. But don't do it when a song that I am unbelievably and apologetically proud of singing is playing while the colors are sitting in front of you, or somebody is saying, it's a wrong time, a wrong place. And this, I'm not talking about politics. Nothing that you haven't heard me say anything that's, as far as my perspective is concerned, that's politically oriented. It has nothing to do with politics. It's not a left thing. It's the same thing as the PBR. It's not a left thing. It's not a right thing. It's a unity thing. They stand united because nobody is going to look around the room at somebody else standing with their hand over their heart, listening to the national anthem or singing it loudly, and think to themselves, man, this is a completely divisive situation.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to think that. So, I mean, yes, I'm passionate about this. I'm really passionate about this. The teams did not come out on the field. They're blaming Trump, the president, for this. They're saying that, they're victims of circumstance. You're not victims of circumstance. Stand together on the sidelines when the national anthem is played. That's all you got to do. And then play football. The bad thing is, I'm going to say this, it was an incredible game yesterday. The game was incredible, but it was ruined by the crap they did at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, and I couldn't say that any better, brother. That's exactly how I feel. And the one thing that I want to say is that America is not perfect. And nobody's claiming it is perfect. But you and I have both been around the world, and I'm here to tell you, this is a great country.
It's an amazing country.
It's an amazing country. And you see the oppression that goes on around the world with the different countries, and you realize the fact that you feel like this country is not what it should be. And like you said, I think you sum that up, and you go to the communities to fix it. But our nation as a whole is fantastic. I love it. We fought for it. We believe in it. And this kneeling for this is basically saying, I don't care for our country the way it is. It's got too many things wrong. And I just would encourage anybody that feels that way, go spend some time in some of these other countries. Go to Syria, go to Saudi Arabia, go to some of these other countries that have some serious issues, and see what life is like over there. So,
well, that's the thing. If you can live inside your little glass house and throw stones, it's easy. It's easy to do that. And in the same regard, somebody else gave me another, posted on social media today. They had a picture of Tim Tebow kneeling to pray and thanking God for his ability to do what he did. And there was such a severe media backlash, of mainstream media backlash about it, because he was praying. It was, but now all of a sudden it's our president's fault that these football players are, kneeling on the sidelines in protest during a song that has nothing to do with it has nothing to do with what they're even protesting about. The message is so convoluted. It started with hands up, don't shoot. That was a false narrative that was shown to be untrue, completely untrue, and fabricated. That's where it all started, from something that was completely fake. And then it turned to something else when that wasn't good enough. And then it turned to something else when that wasn't good enough. And now it's the president's fault because that wasn't good enough. It just none of this divisiveness. They're blaming it on the president for saying what we were all thinking and what we were all talking about, saying just get out there and play football. And he said it in the way a military person would say it. I mean, he said it the way a Texan would say it. He said it the way a cowboy would say it.
Yeah.
But take the politics out of that. Take the president out of that. None of this would have happened if everybody would have just stood, sang the national anthem, and honored our military service members and the sacrifices of those that came before us.
Amen.
Our first responders, our law enforcement, all of those, if they would have just honored that, and then gone into their communities and spent their money there, God knows what they could have changed instead of what just happened on Sunday.
Well, and you're speaking
All I'm
as a
saying is
person
anything, get up or get out.
yep.
Yep.
And you're speaking, Ryan, as a person who has family has sacrificed. And, you know, I told you, we spoke earlier today, I made just a post showing the flag draped coffins. And I mean, that's what the flag, one of the many things that the flag represents to me. That's the highest honor we can bestow upon our fallen warriors, is to drape their coffin in the flag. And then that flag is given to the family, which you are very aware of that.
Yep.
And it's an honor, and it's displayed somewhere in a rightful place because of that. And all those things flow into that. So we could spend the whole evening on it. I appreciate your passion on that, Ryan, and I appreciate where you came from that. And I truly know we're on the same page of this. And
Well, if there's a couple things that I could say about the PBR, just to make sure that you guys understand where the PBR is coming from, because I am their patriotic voice. The PBR is not making a political statement with this. They're sending a positive message to the United States that all of the bull riders and the PBR, they stand in unity. They stand in unity. They're not going after the NFL. They're not trying to throw digs at the NFL. It has nothing to do with the NFL. They have made the decision on their own to stand in unity because that's what they want to do. And, you know, I think that if anybody gets an opportunity to get out to a PBR event, you'll probably find that 8 seconds at a time, it's probably some of the most exciting stuff you'll see. And then if you attend the opening ceremonies for a PBR event, you'll also see it's one of the most patriotic displays that you'll have ever seen at a national sports organization, if not the most patriotic display you'll have ever seen by a national sports organization.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. You know, Ryan, if you don't mind, we got a couple people would like to ask you a couple of questions. I know I saw one of them earlier. If you could tell, do you have a favorite bull rider?
Oh man, I'm gonna tell you what, I've really started following PBR because of all this kind of stuff, all this kind of happened like recently. You know, there's some guys that they keep shuffling back and forth, and I'm really getting to know them all. So I got to be honest with you, I haven't picked a favorite as of yet, because I've watched probably the last 5 different arena events, which they're on CBS, by the way. If you guys are interested, they're on CBS. But the last 5 arena events, and you get to see some guys get like really wrecked and then come back the week after and then win it. I mean, when I say wrecked, that's the name, that's what they call when they get, it isn't just a buck off. It's a, you usually end up unconscious in a wreck. But and then you get these guys that are, they're fighters, and they're just working their way up slowly. And then you got these guys that are super smooth. And I'm just, I got to be honest with you. The best answer to that question is no. I am honored to get to know and become more of the family here. It's almost like when you go to a family reunion and you meet, 8 cousins or 10 cousins or whatever it is and then you start communicating with them, and you're talking to them for a few months. That's kind of my situation. They brought me into the family, and every single one of these guys are just top notch. But I will say this: Shorty Gorman and I have connected and have had some great conversations. So he is one heck of a patriot. If you guys get on his Instagram and his Twitter and social media, he is the guy that started that We Stand United pledge, like I said, and he's a true patriot. He loves America probably as much, if not more. I don't know how anybody could more than me, but he loves America just as much as I do. And he's such a great guy, but he does a lot of speaking during the events. He kind of changes up. He's down on the dirt, and they do commentary from the top, and he's down on the dirt talking and that kind of thing. So there's just a lot of great things about the PBR that I can't necessarily say one rider's my favorite yet. I have to get to hang out with them.
Yep.
You know, we're at World Finals. We'll be getting to hang out a lot. So I'll be able to tell you who I became friends with, because you always seem to attach yourself to somebody.
Have you ever gotten on a bull yet?
That is not what I am there to do. I am not trying to be a bull rider. I'm not trying to pretend to be a bull rider. I have no desire whatsoever to get on the back of one of those things. Yeah. I will get on a stage and sing and have an adrenaline rush for an hour and a half anytime before I get on a bull for a second to even try to think about it. No, those guys are some of the baddest Muldoons. I mean, let me tell you guys a story real quick. And I don't know if you guys know this stuff or not, but Sean Gleason was telling me a story about one of the events that they did last year. One of the riders, and I can't remember the rider's name, but one of the riders got on his first ride in the evening, and they were riding, I think, three times. They had 3 rides. They took the average of those 3 rides or something, and they take the points from those 3 rides. Anyway, his first ride of the evening breaks his leg through and through. No, when I say breaks his leg through and through, like both his bones, broke them through and through. You know what he does? He tapes his leg up and rides the rest of the evening, 2 more rides, and almost wins the event. Literally breaks his leg through and through. Tell me something. You ever seen an NFL football player break his leg through and through and continue a football game?
Nope. That's
and I'm not pitting, once again, I'm not pitting a PBR against the NFL. I'm just saying that these dudes are bad. Like, they're bad. I mean, it's an awesome sport. So all you guys out there and gals, if you are listening to this, start paying attention to what these guys are doing, because it's the fastest growing sport in the world right now. And there's a reason for it. So anyway.
Yeah. The last one more question I had for you, Ryan, is what are your upcoming shows?
My next show, believe it or not, is World Finals, the PBR World Finals. There are some things that are going on right now. We are releasing an EP called Celebrate America. It's a 3-song EP. It's real small. Yeah. The proceeds from this EP are we're supposed to be debuting the EP at the World Finals. We might have some things changed due to recent events, but the proceeds from that are going to a national nonprofit organization benefiting the fallen, and a local nonprofit organization from, I believe it may end up being my brother's military order, the Purple Heart, in my home county, to give back to where I came from. The proceeds are going to be going to both organizations, because we're also doing what's called a tribute to the fallen, where we involved the Dallas police officers' families, 2 9/11 families, and my family, in a tribute video. And we wrote a theme song. I wrote a theme song that's also going to be on the EP called Never Forgotten. So I'm excited about that EP. You guys pay attention to my Facebook. I'm going to be blowing it up the next several days. There's a lot of stuff that's possibly going to be happening this week and next week. If you guys could do me a huge favor out there, everybody that's listening, please share my pages. We need to get as many people on those pages liking my Facebook page. As an independent artist, I'm only at 35,000 likes on my Facebook page. And as Steve has helped me significantly increase my Instagram followers with his posts, I am still only down at around 8,000. And we need to get the word out about what we're doing to as many people as possible, because I think that if I can be your voice and your family's voice, I'm here to support the military, the law enforcement, first responders, previous military, their families. You guys are going to have a voice at the national level that is not going to be quiet. And I'm going to do all that I can to make sure that I can support. I can't necessarily always respond to every one of the messages on social media already, so I apologize if I don't immediately respond to you, but I try to respond to as much as I can. But I have a feeling, just got a feeling, in the next couple of weeks that my social media is going to go ballistic. But I want every single one of you, if I write a message to you and it says "Be safe, Ryan," it was me. There isn't somebody else doing messages on my pages. I'm handling it right now. I may have somebody help when I'm about to sign on with a management company here in Nashville, and a booking agency. But the management company is probably going to help me with social media as far as posting and that kind of stuff is concerned. But responding to, I will try do the best that I can to respond to every message that gets sent to me. So I really appreciate you guys' support.
That's awesome. You want to give out your social media sites just so
Yeah,
everybody that's
absolutely.
listening down the road can hear it?
There's a one-stop shop at weavercountry.com. That's weavercountry.com. That has all of my social media links on the top. But if you want to go, if you're on Facebook, on one of your other tabs while you're listening to this, or if you've downloaded this and you're on social media at the same time, Ryan Weaver Country is my artist page. And if you happen to see my personal page, where we can't take on any more friends, but if you follow my page and send me a message on my personal page, if I write you back, which I should because I check my messages, if I write you back, a lot of folks don't know it's exactly the same thing. And then you can go up there as far as it'll have you following my page, put see first, and then everything that I'm posting will show up in your news feed. The only difference between being friends is I won't be able to see all of your posts on my news feed. But if you want to keep up to date on everything that's going on, shoot me a message to say hi every now and again, whatever it may be. I'll do the best that I can to say hello back. And so Ryan Weaver Country, my Instagram is I believe Weaver Country. No, it's Ryan Weaver.
Ryan Weaver Country.
Yeah, yep. It's Ryan Weaver Country. Goodness gracious, I have trouble. The Ryan Weaver Country is my Instagram. If you want to go check out Burn and my other music video, Crank It, and some performance videos with the West Point Band. I was at West Point performing a couple weeks back with the West Point Band at Trophy Point. A couple of the songs that we got. One of the songs, Unfriendly Fire, that's on the album with him. By the way, there is an album out there right now. If you guys want to download an album, the Benny Havens Band has an album out on iTunes right now, and my song Unfriendly Fire, it's the cover of the album, and you can see it on my Instagram page, says featuring Charlie Daniels and Ryan Weaver. It's the first album that the West Point Band, Benny Havens Band, has ever released in the history of West Point. And my single Unfriendly Fire was the first single off of that, and it is in the consideration rounds for a Grammy. So I'm not a Grammy nominated artist, but I'm in the consideration rounds, which means that it went from the 20,000 songs that were submitted down to the top 15.
Wow,
and
that's awesome.
Yeah, from the top 15, it goes now into the voting by Grammy voters to get into the top 5. And if it gets into the top 5, then I'm considered a Grammy nominated artist. But now we're just in the consideration rounds for it. So you guys go download the Benny Havens Band album. It's patriotic music. It's great stuff. These people are super talented. If anybody has ever gone to hear an Army rock band or something like that, these guys are unbelievably talented. And it was produced in Nashville by a good friend of mine, Michael Spriggs. I actually met him on the Grand Ole Opry when I played on there. He's one of the instrumentalists on there. You guys check that out. And then on iTunes, there are 3 singles on iTunes. We got Burn, Crank It, and a New Set of Tires. There's another Ryan Weaver out there. It's not me, and you're going to see a significant difference in the music because he does Americana stuff, and mine is more rock and country mixed. Yeah. But I guess that pretty much does it. My Twitter's Weaver Country. So if you look up Ryan Weaver country music, put those 3 words in, or those 4. I went to public school. Those 4 words. Put Ryan Weaver country music in there. If we don't fill up the top of your page or for your first couple pages, I'd be surprised. You'll be able to find anything you need to know. There's a lot of stuff about to come out though. So if you guys stick with me, you'll be able to keep up to date on everything that's happening.
That's awesome, brother. Awesome. Well, your guys in the room are saying thanks for you coming on and doing this, and we obviously appreciate this immensely. And as I get ready to, once Derek gets this thing all ready to upload to iTunes, then I'll definitely be doing a handful of shout outs to say, hey, go listen to this on iTunes also. So I can't tell you enough, brother, the respect I have for you, your family, and just you spending a little bit of time coming on our podcast. It means a lot to us.
Well, I can't thank you guys enough for inviting me, and thank you for spreading the word. And this I've been stalking your Instagram page and seeing what you're doing, and it's so great to see other patriots out there that aren't afraid to speak their hearts about, what's going on in support of our brothers and sisters in arms. And I just can't wait for the rest of everybody to see what's about to happen after November 4th. It's going to get crazy. And by the way, that's going to be live fed on Facebook, I believe, from the PBR's page. My performance is going to be live fed, I believe. So
awesome.
Look up the PBR's Facebook page too.
Well, let's definitely stay in touch, brother. And again, thank you for spending a little bit of time with us tonight. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah,
right on, man.
And we want to thank everyone who has joined us live on the YouTube channel, talking and asking questions. We appreciate it. Those listening not live on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Combat Learjet, where you can jump on future podcasts and talk and hang out with us live. Thank you again for coming on, Ryan. It was awesome to be able to talk to you.
Absolutely.
Right on, brothers. You guys be safe.
All right. Thank you, brother.